Tuesday, the 6th of February, will mark 1 year since the two powerful earthquakes rocked Turkey and Syria. The 7.8 and 7.6 magnitude earthquakes claimed at least 55,000 lives, leaving more than 100,000 people injured. South African rescue teams, led by Gift of the Givers, were deployed to the Hatay province within 48 hours following the earthquakes. 1 year on, and the country continues to recover. We're now joined by the Turkish ambassador to South Africa, Aysegul, Kandas, about the state of the province 1 year on. Thanks for making time for us today, Ambassador. It's been 1 year since the earthquake. Take us through your reflections on what is going on at the moment, 1 year on.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Yes, it's been a sad time, a sad period for us, for a whole year, since the 6th of February, of course. As you said, the numbers are high. Our president has termed it the disaster of the century. Turkish people are resilient, and we are still trying to recover from it, the whole population, not only the region of 11 provinces.
One of those provinces and one of those regions, along with Hatay, Kahraman, Maresh, was the other. How exactly have they been recovering? What is the situation of the infrastructure? Almost all the buildings across those regions were destroyed.
Correct. Of course, the devastation was quite huge, and South Africa has followed very closely through its NGOs and government and civil society and people how the rescue efforts were going on. And then the reconstruction efforts started. If I need to give you some numbers, I brought some numbers with me. First of all, reconstruction meaning giving houses to the people, because the people, the population in those 11 to 12 provinces were living in tents, winter tents first, and then they were moved into containers. Now the Turkish government has been in the process for a long time, in the process of building, constructing houses for them.
Bugünkü kura törenimizde 6572'si il ve ilçe merkezlerimizde, 703'ü de kırsalda olmak üzere 7275 hak sahibinin konutunun anahtarını teslim ediyoruz.
For instance, Hatay. The Hatay region, the city of Hatay was almost erased from the map, as you know. So the debris of 95% of around 83,000 buildings that were destroyed or severely damaged during the earthquake in Hatay, this debris has been successfully removed over that time. And the housing projects are continuing, and around 7,000 houses will be provided to those affected by the earthquake. In actual fact, reconstruction, that is the main, and restructuring of the whole region, that is the main task of the Turkish government. Very soon, it has been announced that very soon 10,840 flats, meaning houses, will be handed out, given to the earthquake victims. So this is a huge reconstruction effort. I have to say there is still a certain number of people living in container houses. Our president has promised to give houses to everyone affected in 1 year's time. So this has come up, and there will be the ceremony of handing over of the houses soon. As you know, it is not about building concrete houses. Houses can be demolished, houses can be built. It is more about recovering from a trauma. It is also at the same time a psychological trauma for the whole country, because people lost families and their dreams. So recovering from that will take time. It's not about only giving them houses, as you can understand.
Ambassador, let's go back 1 year. what went through your mind when you found out that the earthquake had struck Turkey? You're obviously the ambassador to the country in South Africa, and then you have loved ones who are living in the country, and you were obviously born out in Istanbul as well.
Yes. So I was born in Istanbul. I'm from Istanbul, and my whole family lives in Istanbul. And I had actually, by coincidence, I had spent my vacation time in Istanbul and had returned from Istanbul to South Africa on the 5th of February, together with my daughter. I woke up to the news early in the morning of the 6th. So the day after I arrived in the country, this happened. So from that point onwards, it was more like a marathon, or it's very hard to remember those days because they went so fast. It was like a very extraordinary human effort by myself as the ambassador and my whole embassy team for, I think, two months. We barely slept. It was a 7/24 kind of task. Why? Because a lot of coordination had to be done. All the embassies of Turkey around the world, around 250 missions we have around the world. All the embassies were mobilized, were coordinated over certain accounts, let's say WhatsApp accounts and everything, because everything, all the relief efforts had to be coordinated. And so you can't sleep really because there are messages coming from the headquarters. AFAD was the main, as you know, our disaster management authority was the main coordinator of the whole efforts. And we had to send relief items as soon as possible. And it didn't matter how distant we were. And in that respect, I think South Africa, through all our efforts, has ranked one of the first countries in Africa, even though so far, to send all that in-kind assistance during the first weeks especially. So to this day, I mean the first 2 months, we were able to send 180 tons of in-kind assistance. That includes winter tents, generators, mobile toilets, and the rest, heaters, for instance. 180 tons of in-kind assistance every single day with Turkish Airlines cargo flights. So that was a huge effort because the embassy was collecting from all over South Africa all the donations and sending them. So in that respect, I think that was one of the toughest times of my life because you can't even stop to think how people are suffering. You can only work as hard to alleviate their pain, you know, to help them in whatever way you can. And I'm so glad I am blessed to be in a country like South Africa that could have empathy, so much compassion towards the Turkish people, together with its state and government and its people. Because I have seen so much humanity, so much common humanity coming from South Africa, so much donations. 4.5 million rand was collected. So I can't say enough about the gratitude that I feel as a representative of the Turkish government towards South Africa.
I was going to touch on this a bit later on, but seeing as though you spoke about that relationship with South Africa, how do you think the earthquake response from teams such as the Gift of the Givers increased and probably improved that relationship between South Africa and Turkey? There's lots of diplomatic agreements between the two countries. Did this perhaps increase it in any way?
Yes, of course. Why? Because it's a humanitarian crisis, first and foremost. And Turkey, being the first country in the world when it comes to humanitarian aid compared to its GDP, has always helped any country in need in whatever disaster the country has been. Then all of a sudden, Turkey, the Turkish people have found themselves in a situation where they need all that help because it is beyond the capacity of any state or government. That's why in the first week of the crisis, 101 countries responded to the UN emergency appeal. One of them was South Africa. In the first few days, as you personally have witnessed, Gift of the Givers sent around 33 people. That included, medical doctors, search and rescue teams, and SAPS, SAPS, K9 dogs. So that team. That was very critical in the first week in order to be able to save lives and identify dead bodies under the rubble. So we will never forget that. How fast South Africa responded. We will never forget the statement of the President of South Africa, Honorable Mr. Ramaphosa, Honorable Minister Pandor, how they responded to it. And they have even, DIRCO has even recently, much later on in the process, has announced to us that they want to help with in-kind assistance, further help Turkey with in-kind assistance for Turkey's reconstruction efforts. So this has, of course, brought the two peoples together in every single field. And we are grateful to the Gift of the Givers for how many lives they have saved. And this relationship is continuing. But it's not only Gift of the Givers. I have to mention other NGOs like Alimdat, Cemiyetul Ulema. They have become our friendship with the Muslim community of South Africa, with the NGOs, with the churches. All segments of society has been tested in a time like this, in such hard times. That's when you know who your friends are. In that respect, I think this has been a big opportunity based on a terrible disaster.
During the immediate response that you were undertaking, you were in essence at the Johannesburg Tambo International Airport almost every day.
Yes.
Was there any particular moment in time where you stopped and realized, all right, this is really happening and it's really difficult? Was there any point in time where you can stop and remember one specific incident?
I have remembered, especially this incident when I did start praying to God, because I felt so frustrated. I thought it's not going to happen. This was a difficult task, and it was the donation of 2 big tents, each one 1,000 square meters, donated by a South African businessman to Turkey, 2 tents. It was so hard. It took us 1 month to assemble, disassemble, and assemble again, that thing, so that it could be transported to Turkey by plane. Because these are tents that can only be shipped, overseas. So to save time, to transport them fast to Turkey so that they can be used as schools in the Hatay province, that was the hardest task that we could manage as a teamwork together with that company, Mr. Irfan Baks. So it took us 1 month, 26 tons of tent material to take the biggest Turkish Airlines cargo flight, the biggest Turkish Airlines cargo plane. And it was a very tough operation. It flew to Istanbul, from there to Hatay. It had to be reassembled and made into 2 tents in Hatay by the army, by the Turkish military. It took them 10 days to set up the tents. Can you imagine? So that was the hardest operation, and there were times when I was stuck, and I was like, no, it's not going to happen. But now I am happy to say that there are 2 tents, big tents, that are still being used as schools in the region, in the Dörtyol district of Hatay. The South African flag is there. Afkaf SA is there because it was through the auspices of Afkaf SA and Mr. Harun Kalla that we could make this happen. And Mr. Irfan Baks and his company, of course. This was the biggest donation in the world in terms of the size to Turkey, to the earthquake victims, People are still going from South Africa, visiting those tents. The Turkish government is still very grateful. The latest donation is a big size, industry size air conditioners that needed to be given to the tents because they were very hot in the summer. And that donation, again, came from South Africa, came from Mr. Bax.
Going into the winter right now, I mean, when we were deployed into Hatay, it was, I think, between -2 and -6 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
For those who are still affected by the earthquake 1 year on, I mean, heat must be one of the top priorities going into the next 3 to 4 months.
Of course, weather is a big factor always. During the first weeks of the earthquake, we know that people couldn't survive because of the winter conditions also. I mean, if it wasn't winter, if it wasn't 5, 6 in the morning, when this thing happened, they couldn't escape. They were caught in their beds, first of all. Second, it was, as you said, -5, 6 degrees. If it wasn't for these conditions, maybe more lives could have been saved if it was another time of the year. And that's why, since then, we have been struggling with generators, no electricity, we have been struggling with heaters, and then seasons change. So, but we have recovered that. I mean, people are in container houses, they have everything inside, they were completely donated by the government or Turkish business associations. So right now, I think we are at a better stage, especially when this month the houses will be presented by our president and the relevant government institutions to the earthquake victims. Everything is getting better, but it doesn't take one year. It takes a few years to recover.
Has this earthquake changed the way emergency response is done in Hatay? And also just speaking towards then some of the infrastructure requirements, has there been a change with regards to that as buildings are now being constructed?
Of course, every country, every institution has to take its lessons and has to improve the regulations or practices. The thing in Turkey was we are in an earthquake zone. There are 2 big fault lines. This one was one of them. The regulations have always been in place. There hasn't been much change in the regulations. The point is in implementation. How to get them implemented, how to raise our standards to a standard like Japan, which is also in an earthquake zone. That's the main challenge of our state. Of course, we are improving everything, especially the implementation aspects. This region of those provinces in southeast Turkey is being reborn with new buildings that are completely built according to the latest standards. And this has started a big movement in Turkey, of course, in other parts, especially Istanbul, where lots of buildings are being, demolished and rebuilt again because they do not stick to the earthquake regulations that we have in place in Turkey. So, of course, that's a big effort, and that's a big transition.
I'm going to bring it back to the community that we had exposure to and that we had, in a sense, experienced our deployment with. We saw a strong strength of perhaps a resilience, a strong sense of community and welcoming, even as a team of journalists and of rescue workers. I guess that speaks close to perhaps the kind of people that come from Turkey. Is that still as strong, and has that perhaps even increased following the earthquake last year?
Yes, I think Turkish people, so we come back to culture, cultural traits. Turkish people culturally have always been resilient and have always had a very strong community spirit and strong family values. Sometimes I liken it to the culture of the South African people. When you go to the rural side of Turkey and the rural side of South Africa are quite similar. I go to the rural side a lot for development cooperation projects all over South Africa, and I see that myself. So I'm learning isiZulu. I'm trying to communicate with the communities. I can see the the compassion, the sincerity in the people, and the community spirit, which is called Ubuntu. I learned about Ubuntu here, then I realized what was happening at the earthquake zone since 6th of February last year is also an example of Ubuntu, where people, the communities, get together and help each other. So this is a good example of our common humanity, compassion, and we also need to learn so much from South Africa.
Do the people of Turkey still need assistance going forward? The government has provided assistance from the Turkish side as well. You say those houses will be handed over in the next week or so. Is there anything else that is needed, and can South Africans and perhaps people across the globe get involved?
Thank you for asking that. It requires a lot of international effort, which happened. There was a UN emergency appeal. There was a European Union effort. They also had a donation raising event. So there have been pledges from different countries. So this is still ongoing. I mean, many countries have offered to help the reconstruction effort of Turkey. So South Africa is also one of them. As I told you, recently, some months ago actually, October I think, we started working with DIRCO because they wanted to give in-kind assistance of a certain amount to help the reconstruction efforts, whatever is needed now. Could be mobile phones, could be, whatever material needs are needed. South Africa offered to send them from here. So this is still ongoing because there's a part where the government is, of course, in the picture, but there's also a part where we definitely need assistance from the international community, yes.
I think that's great to see from that international point of view, and I'm sure many organizations will be getting involved, perhaps even beyond this period as well. Just speaking to some of the aspects and the dynamic which we had seen on the ground, Hatay and Antakya was very, very close. I think it was about 100 kilometers from the Aleppo border. What was the dynamic then, having perhaps some migrants from Syria in your country, and then also having the Turkish people, welcoming not just other people from other countries, but welcoming people from the media and perhaps relief efforts as well? That must have been a very unique dynamic in a country such as Turkey.
Yes, of course. That's the region where a lot of Syrian immigrants have been there, because since the start of the conflict in Syria in 2011, there have been many Syrians migrating to Turkey through that border, Aleppo border and Hatay region. So at this point, I think it's still close to 4 million Syrian refugees that we are hosting. There have been so many Syrian babies born, because it's been since 2011. So they have been settled, had their businesses, and a certain number of them, unfortunately, got killed in the earthquake. So it's both Turkish people and people of Syrian origin that we lost in that respect. And in that respect, it's also, we could see, again, how well they have been integrated, how much they've been helping each other, Turkish people and Syrians in the region, Hatay, Gaziantep region, Kahramanmaraş region, for instance. So it is about a humanitarian disaster. It's about humanity. It doesn't, these earthquakes, because the Syrian side also got the hit. So earthquakes do not really recognize race, nationality. You see what I mean?
That sense of Ubuntu definitely is there. Ambassador, as we wrap up, I assume the relationship between South Africa and Turkey will go strong, perhaps well into the future, and perhaps by extension as well, the gift of the givers, who also has a strong relationship to Turkey.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Imtiyaz Süleyman, who is my brother, Kari Ziyad Patel, Harun Kalla, and all those influential people in South Africa who helped us, the leaders in the communities. Thank you.
Ambassador Kandas, thanks very much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. That Ambassador Aysegul Kandas from the Turkish embassy here in South Africa, just providing us with her side of exactly what is going on in Turkey following those twin earthquakes last year. The relief efforts are continuing, and as we heard, speaking towards what the government will be doing over there 1 year on, there will be at least 10,000 homes being provided to for those who have lost those as well. Please stay tuned here to Newzroom Afrika on channel 405.